Welcome, everybody, to the House Committee on General and Housing. Today is Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2025. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Our first matter this morning is representatives of the Vermont Housing and Conservation Coalition. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate spending the day in the People's House. There are going to be a series of testimony, and Chris Donnelly is going to start off replacing Molly Dugan. So Chris, you want to take it away?
Sure. Good morning, Chris Donnelly with the Champlain Housing Trust. And this is, it's great to be here, back with you again. It's probably the shortest testimony you'll ever hear me. The Housing Conservation Coalition does an annual legislative day every year. We are in 9 different committees today. I talked to over 80 lawmakers in both chambers. The Housing Conservation Coalition is made up of about 50 organizations, community-based organizations. And we utilize the money that you allocate and appropriate to the Vermont Housing Conservation Board to do the projects that you hear about all the time. And if you can, I don't know if this has been, this annual report has been given to you from the Housing Conservation Board. They will probably send this to you electronically.
They're outside on the table, yeah.
So
They're
they're
out on the table.
So you can see-
They were put in our boxes.
Okay. You can see over the last couple of years, the investments and the results made, but just briefly over the last 4 or 5 years, the support through the Housing Conservation Board has allowed us, organizations around the state to support various types of housing, over 4,500 households in the state, and preserve 12,000 acres of farmland and 10,000 acres of natural areas of forest. We ask each year that you support full funding for the Housing Conservation Board through the property transfer tax, roughly half of the property transfer tax collected. This year, the governor has recommended in his budget that the legislature fully fund the Housing Conservation Board, so we're very appreciative of that. That would be $36.9 million. We do know that that's not going to solve the whole housing crisis, and so we do ask that you make one-time investments on the housing side of the ledger. But with that, I will cede the chair and let the witnesses tell you about some of the projects. Or did you?
Really quick, can you just, 39.6?
I'm sorry,
36.
36.9.
That's the
That's
base.
the base funding.
Thank you.
And happy to come back and talk to you more about what additional funding would look like.
Thank you. So Patrick, come forward here. Tell us, I know a number of you haven't been in the committee before, whereas Chris Donnelly is, the seat has the imprint of Chris in it. So members of the committee, would you introduce yourself to the rest of our witnesses?
Nothing repeats me more. I'm Ashley Bartley. I serve Fairfax and the majority of Georgia.
Leonora Dodge, I serve Essex Town in the city of Essex Township.
Joe Parsons, Newberry, Thompson, and Brock.
Hi, I'm Tom Charlton. I represent Happy Chester, Grafton, Wyndham.
I'm Mary Howard. I represent Rutland District 6.
Good morning.
I don't know what I should.
Chair.
Mark Mahaly, and I'm sorry, I represent Calais, Plainfield, and Marshfield. So would you like to state your name for the record and take it away?
Good morning. My name is Patrick Shattuck. I'm the Executive Director of Rural Edge. We are the affordable housing organization serving the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont. So a little bit of history about us. We began in 1986 as the Gilman Housing Trust, named after our first housing development in Gilman. It actually was the mill manager's mansion. It is still in our portfolio because, as you will hear today, one very important component of the Housing and Conservation Board funding is it requires perpetual affordability. So those units that were developed in 1986 are still serving folks today, still a great place to call home, and are in high demand. We're a nonprofit housing and community development corporation. We've been here for 39 years, and really we serve the entire Northeast Kingdom. So we've had.
Patrick, have you had to, with respect to that particular project, which is pretty old by now?
Yeah.
Have you had to do any major renovations since then?
So one thing we do is we always fund replacement reserves, so we're planning for capital improvements, but there have been revisits. We're fortunate in that project has subsidy associated with it. So we're able to get a little bit higher rent than we would normally see and able to capitalize our reserves. But there was in about 10 years ago, a more significant revisit of the project, but certainly not to the extent of the original renovation. And we're funding reserves. We just did parking lot paving and restriping because that's very important to elderly folks, that you have an easy to maintain flat surface. I did some improvements to the common areas, and I know we replaced the roofs within the last couple of years as well.
When you say capitalize, is it, my understanding, is this correct, that when you use federal funds or various sources of subsidy, you have to set aside a certain amount each year of the income from the project each year in order to accumulate it so that when you have to make repairs, you have something to do it from?
Yes. So each month, a portion of the rent is set aside for replacement reserves. That's kept in a separate account. And you've got to know what to do with that. So we have capital needs assessments, which really look at each component, each system of the building, and sort of look at the lifespan so that we're planning for that. It looks at it for roughly a 10-year period, so that, the water heater in you that serves, 4 units is 6 years old. You'd better start planning for replacement of that. Now, what we do is we take that each year as we're setting the budgets for the property. We identify the capital improvements. We meet with our maintenance staff. We say, okay, here's what was projected. What have we done in the interim that maybe wasn't expected, or what's holding up better than was expected? So we use that to set aside our plan for our improvements each year within the portfolio. Now we've got, at the end of this year, we'll be close to 1,000 units across the Northeast Kingdom. So we're doing that not for just one property, but across the board. And that really, it's a team involvement from everyone. We have a capital projects manager, our finance department, the property managers, the maintenance staff, and those capital needs assessments, which are done by a third party, and we have them updated every 5 years.
Thank you.
In 1998, we joined NeighborWorks. So we are part of the NeighborWorks network. We have a home ownership center. And so NeighborWorks, the national organization, monitors us every 3 years to make sure that we are operating at the highest standards. We have a board that includes both residents of the public, private, government sector, and residents. Really important that we include those. So in the photos, you can see the top photo is West Burke Housing, Birkeland Lane. This was completed. It was completed in phases in late 22 and 23. But there was a property that was developed by a private landlord. It had rental assistance. There were 9 units of elderly housing and 3 family duplexes. They wanted to make sure that the property continued, so they actually worked with us to take it over, purchase it, and redevelop it. When we looked at it, it had about $1 million. You talk about those capital needs while it was operating as a privately owned facility. We looked and it was going to have about $1 million worth of investments within the next 5 years. So we looked at a redevelopment of that, but it was also in a village. It's in West Burke Village, walking distance to the post office and the library and the general store and the playground, the senior center. And we said, we've got a 7.5 acre site. Now, a 7.5 acre site that has what's also considered a public water system because it's a private system that serves more than 26 residents, 3 separate leach fields, but we were able to add 8 new units there as well. So if you look, the teal building in the lower right-hand corner is the senior building, and up on top of the hill, sort of looking like a cluster of farm buildings, that's at least what we hope, are 15 units of general occupancy housing, including units up to 4 bedrooms. So really in high demand, lots of green space, really nice amenity. And the property on the lower left is Derby Line Gardens, about 500 feet from the Canadian border, a beautiful structure. It has 9 units of elderly housing.
Patrick, is that one of the things that we've been hearing testimony on, some of it jointly with the Commerce Committee, has been different ways of helping communities build in rural areas with new financing devices. And one of the issues is, well, what are the size of developments that we're seeing? So I'm hearing 9 units. What's the range that you're usually looking at when you develop?
Yeah, our goal is to get to 20. So elsewhere in the state, that's considered a small project. That's considered a large project for us. And in the building on the top, West Burke, we got to 24 units through 5 buildings with multiple leach fields and our own system, even though it's in a village center, near a ski area, high area of demand. So the complexity is really important to consider. That impacts cost. I think we have 14 different funding sources for that. But it's also really important that it fits in with the village. It doesn't look like it stands out. It looks very consistent with the community. And because of that, people really love living there. So, VHCD funding brings, as I said, we've got a diverse portfolio of over 1,000 perpetual or almost 1,000 perpetually affordable units. We've got a big pipeline. So when we talk about that money, the governor's recommended appropriation, that's the base. To keep going and producing at what we have planned, we're going to need more. And we know that fits the need in large urban areas, and it's needed in rural communities. And we've got it in all corners of the kingdom. We're working with Jay Peak on housing there. We're working in Lowell. We've got lots of construction underway in both Newport City and town, getting ready to break ground later this year in St. Johnsbury and Danville and Peacham. So really, those are projects that are really active. And then we've got others we're working on. We work with community partners. One thing that's really important is we work with the municipalities. We listen to them. We talk to their planning commissions. We talk with local groups. We partner with libraries. In Groton, we own the library. That's been a long-term part of the redevelopment of that town center complex. And it complements our housing. So we really look, especially in rural communities, as how we have those relationships and how they complement each other. But that real estate portfolio, that investment of VHCB funds brings over $700,000 annually to local and school taxes. I actually got the most recent number. It's closer to 800,000. But that's, we're frequently asked, do your properties pay taxes? Yes, in many communities, we're the highest taxpayer. We make our staff available to community partners to talk about projects, whether they're ours or whether they're other housing resources. And that's something that VHCB resources allow our organization to do. And really, we provide housing for the most vulnerable residents of the region. 43% of the residents in the units that we own and occupy have moved in from homelessness. I believe that's the highest of any of the housing organizations. And we just did a survey. About 70% of our residents have household incomes less than $20,000 annually.
Do you happen to know off the top of your head what the median income is in the kingdom?
Well, so it varies, and of course, it's based by household size. So we look at it, there are median household incomes, but it's also our units are based on household size,
Right.
and the limitations. So I don't want to quote it off the top of my head, but we can certainly get that for you.
Thank you.
We're doing exciting things. These are our Newport Crossing. This is the redevelopment of the former Sacred Heart site in Newport City. So adjacent to St. Mary's Star of the Sea, if you've been to Newport, in that church that sits the highest point and looks over long views of Lake Memphremagog. We acquired, closing in November, the former school, convent, and 8.5 acres. It was a brownfield site, 8.5 acres. I will tell you, about 25 years ago, the nuns had removed 2 underground storage tanks. And they did that all by the book, and no one knows what happened with the soil. And so I can imagine someone saying to the custodian, just go spread that around the fields. Well, we can tell you, we've done, I believe it was 51 test wells on the site. We know that those soils were spread out to the point where they aren't contaminated anymore. But because it took over $150,000 in investigation, and we're doing remediation where there was a small area. But the convent will be 26 units of rental housing, and then the school next door, we'll start later this year converting it into 24 shared equity condominiums. So really looking and working with the city to create a new neighborhood, a diverse neighborhood, different housing opportunities. Both projects have funding from VHCB and are fully funded, and we're underway. We're framing out apartments and pouring new footers for Newport Crossing.
Patrick, I want to make sure that you get to what you need to tell us, since we have another 3 witnesses to go. You've got about 5 minutes, max.
Okay, so I think it's important we talk about the buildings, but we also have the impact on people. So what does the VHCB funding bring to the people we serve? Safe, secure housing, a new beginning and hope, a supportive environment, convenience and affordability, and a healthy environment where residents thrive. So I've just included here some stories. These brothers moved in 4 years ago into Olivia Place housing in Lindenville. They had housing, but they had no hot water, no shower. The heat, the oil tank had failed. And so the heat that they had, and they were paying rent, they had to manually feed their oil burner. And of course, it wouldn't run all night. So they were constantly dealing with frozen pipes, and they didn't have a lock on their door. So they were very excited. And what was so excited when we talked about what housing meant to them, their new unit, and they will both go to work full-time. We're able to be clean and warm, and we haven't been sick at all since we got here. These are not high standards. We're certainly providing a whole lot more, but that's what they were looking for. And that's what we constantly hear from folks in the kingdom. And I know my colleagues hear that across the state. The shelter at Moose River opened in January of last year. Prior to that, there had been no emergency shelter in the Northeast Kingdom. Lots of folks working. We don't have a designated agency to serve those experiencing homelessness in the Northeast Kingdom, but there really wasn't a lot of progress. We found a property that might work, and in 4 months with VHCB commitment, and they were there early on, we were able to acquire a property, upgrade it, and get its certificate of occupancy within 4 months. No, it's not fancy. It wasn't a significant investment. And in fact, part of it was, let's get something up and operating. So we focused on sprinkler system and air handling and accessibility, and come back to us when you understand how it operates. So we actually submitted late yesterday a request for the second phase, which will add some beds. and more program space. But these folks are really unique. They actually spoke at the opening and really shared what that facility has meant to them. One had been in our housing before. She had a CARES voucher. When they were split up, they both struggled with addiction. Her care voucher expired and she left on her own because she knew she couldn't afford rent. Ended up in a motel. They reunited, lapsed into addiction, ended up leaving the motel, and they ended up at the shelter. And they had a place where they were supported and they had access to services. And they now have turned their lives around. They are actually renting a VHIP unit in St. Johnsbury, so they're in permanent housing. She's working locally, and he is pursuing a goal of securing a full-time job as a peer counselor. So we had lots of run-ins with these folks along the way. They rented from us, then she didn't, but it was that emergency shelter, that investment that has now gotten them into permanent housing.
Thank you. This is really interesting, and I have to ask you to wind up.
Okay. Got lots of involved residents. I do want to focus on the homeownership programs because they are so important to us. So VHCB's Homeland program allows consumer-led initiated purchases to receive funding in exchange for perpetual affordability. So the top house was a single mom in Orleans who works at Ethan Allen, making $16 an hour. She was renting the house. It was placed on the market, and she came to us. She was concerned she was going to not have a place to live. We worked with VHCB's Homeland program and Equity Builder from the Federal Home Loan Bank, and she was able to purchase that house and is paying less than she was renting. And then the bottom one, I will just share a little bit of testimony, not with my Rural Edge hat, but as a dad.
I think you've got about a minute.
Okay, I'm doing it. It's really quickly. The house in the lower right is a house that my daughter purchased through the Homeland program. She had gone to school out of state, returned to the state with her partner a couple of years ago. She works in a social service agency with kids on the spectrum. Her partner works at a hospital processing insurance claims, not high-paying jobs. They wanted to be in Vermont, and they were able to purchase this home using Homeland. But what makes it kind of unique is it was a house that we renovated in 1999 to bring her home from the hospital as a baby. It's in Groton. And she saw it and it had declined and she wanted to turn it into her home. So she has now purchased it, is doing repairs, is volunteering in the community. And I think we talk about housing for the next generation. And so I can testify as a parent, not just a housing organization, that, these programs are for our friends, our neighbors, and our families. They impact all of us. They're so important. So all I can do is, encourage full funding of VHCB and any more that you can bring, because we'll certainly put it to good use.
Thank you very much, Patrick.
Thank you.
For sharing with us what Rural Edge is doing. Our next witness is Hannah Pickett, who is a resident, Champlain Housing Trust resident. I'm sorry, I apologize to people, but we do have what it is that we have another witness coming in to testify at 11:30.
Good morning.
Morning, tell us your name.
I'm Hannah Pickett. I live in Williston at Zephyr Place, where I'm a Champlain Housing Trust resident. I am not homeless because of the work that CHT has done, the support of the Vermont Housing Conservation Board. And I want to tell you my story of hardship, resiliency, and hope. I grew up in the beautiful state of Vermont. I'm 37 and a graduate of the Community College of Vermont with a degree in medical assisting. I loved working in healthcare, connecting with patients, helping providers, making a difference. But in 2018, I was rear-ended in a car accident. My glasses came off my face, everything in my car went flying, my glove box opened from the impact. My car wasn't badly damaged, so I assumed I was fine. I was not fine. I had lost basic skills like reading comprehension, math, executive functioning, telling time, problem solving, from daily migraines, exhaustion, and confusion. It has taken me until recently to recover. I lost my job, had limited income, and eventually received an eviction notice right before the pandemic. I was so sick and stressed from financial instability, I lost all of my hair. I was overwhelmed, scared, and confused. Upon eviction, I had nowhere to go. I lost most of my belongings, including my 15-year-old support cat. I was completely on my own with a damaged brain. It was exhausting being exposed to the weather. I was having constant PTSD attacks, losing time, blacking out, not knowing where I was or what I was doing when they ended. I was very vulnerable, frail, and weak. I was falling asleep in public, and as a single woman, that's very dangerous. I had difficulty finding shelter. We don't have enough shelters, and we certainly don't have enough housing. After some time, I was hospitalized, and it took about a month and a half for me to gain enough strength to leave the hospital. A nurse case manager helped me apply for disability and the emergency hotel program during the pandemic. Without a stable address, I would not have been able to apply for Social Security benefits or secure my housing. I finally located my emotional support animal, Minu. He was with animal control being processed to be sent to a shelter. Conditions at the motel were rough, but I had a roof over my head and was very grateful. If it were not for the emergency hotel program, I would have not survived due to my disabilities and my poor health. My nurse case manager helped connect me with CHT, leading me to secure my housing voucher once my Section 8 voucher was approved. There's typically a 5-year waiting list for Section 8. There is a lack of affordable housing for low income and the disabled in Vermont. My Social Security benefits will not cover 1 month's rent for a 1-bedroom apartment at market rate. I moved into a CHT apartment just in time and finally had a safe space to rebuild my life. My apartment is spacious, beautiful, full of light with large windows. Minu likes to watch the birds. I love to bake and share goodies with my neighbors. When I walked in, I knew we were finally home. Most people are unhoused for reasons like losing your good health, like myself, leaving an abusive relationship, trauma, a death, falling behind on rent or a mortgage. Because of my housing, I am safe, healthy, and even happy. I have not had a PTSD-related event in 2 years. As you can see, I now have hair. This is what stability looks like. Today, I live at Zephyr Place, a former hotel converted by CHT into 72 apartments using VHCB's funding. Many of the residents share a similar or more difficult story. We have a sense of community at Zephyr Place with monthly coffee hour, ice cream socials, and summer gardening activities with our property manager. These things matter so much to us. Our resident services coordinator, Katie, helped me turn my hobby, card making, into a small business. I now have a fulfilling life. I'm able to volunteer in my community and make art when I'm not in pain. CHT has given me safety, stability, and a new sense of purpose. Thank you for having me. I hope that you are able to fully fund VHCB. I'm told that won't create as much housing as we need, so please provide even more funding if you can. There are just too many people out there that are still looking for the stability that I've been able to find.
Thank you. Do members of the committee have questions? Please, go ahead.
Well, not a question, but I had the honor of hearing your story at the Champlain Housing Trust luncheon. And I'm glad to get to see you again because I wanted to tell you that you had me in tears about Minu, the cat. I was just like, gutting, but thank you so much for coming here and sharing your story with all of us. It's so important to hear your lived experience and how much Champlain Housing Trust has really helped. And I'm so happy to hear your story again and would love to see some of your cards
Great, thank you. I can give you a business card.
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very
so
much.
Any other questions by committee members? Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Anna, for coming. Appreciate it. Kate Winter. Kate, you wanna, since you saw us introduce ourselves, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Kate Warner, from the Trust for Public Land. I'm the Conservation Director there for the state of Vermont. And I live in Warren. I've been with Trust for Public Land for 20 years. Thank you so much for your time today. So Trust for Public Land was founded 52 years ago. We work all across the country on creating parks and conservation areas important to communities, with a mission centered around public access to the outdoors and deep community benefits. So across the country, we've conserved more than 4 million acres here in Vermont. It's a little over 72,000 acres. And across the country, we've done everything from urban parks to community gardens to huge wilderness areas in Montana. Here in Vermont, we've really focused the last 35 years on forest land conservation. So new community forests, addition to Green Mountain National Forest, additions to state parks and state forests, as well as public easements on large private forest land. So funding, so in Vermont, we lose more than 12,000 acres of forest land per year. That is one of the big sources for our recreation, our clean water, our clean air, and home for our wildlife. Across New England, about 63% of Vermont's conserved lands provides public access, compared to about 87% of public land provides public access in New Hampshire and Maine. And more than 20% of Vermonters, including 31,000 kids, lack close to home access to the outdoors. So funding from Vermont Housing Conservation Board, as well as federal funding, state funding, and private sources help keep our forests intact and open for recreation. So I wanted to share one story of a conservation project that completely transformed the community, and it is right where Representative Burrows lives in West Windsor. This was a conservation.
My house.
No, it's not.
So this was a conservation project that Trust for Public Land worked with the town 10 years ago. And I'm bringing it up today because in the Valley News this week, and it was reprinted in Vermont Digger 2 days ago, was a story of the impact over the last 10 years of this property that we helped them conserve and the incredible volunteers of the Scutney Outdoors who really have helped transform this community. So West Windsor, population of a little more than 1,000 souls at the time. And the center of town is Mount Ascutney, the former ski area. Until 2010, it was the major source of jobs in town. After Ascutney Resort closed, West Windsor lost all of their restaurants, but one, all of their bed and breakfasts, their ski and bike shop, one of their 2 general stores. Between 2010 and 2015, their grand list dropped by 1/3. The condos at the base of the ski area that had been selling for $300,000 were selling for $100,000. And they were rented out at whatever price the owners could get for them. Town leaders searched for buyers for the ski resort to no avail. So their one saving grace was a group of intrepid volunteers called Sports Trails of the Scutney Basin that have been busy building recreational infrastructure on both the private resort property as well as the adjacent 1,100-acre town forest. High-quality mountain bike trails, hiking trails, ski trails that hosted the Vermont Mountain Biking Festival, Vermont 50, gatherings and races that attracted thousands from all over New England each year. These trails started to attract even more attention, but half of the 35-mile trail was threatened because it was on this private resort property. So the town really wanted to invest more money in marketing the trail network and providing a source of recreation for all of New England. But with a loose agreement with the town, the landowner could cut off access to half the trail network with just 30 days notice. In 2014, as the final title issues were being cleared on the bankrupt resort, the owner planned to liquidate. He was going to subdivide. He was looking at putting up wind towers. He was looking into clear cutting. He had conversations about turning the mountain into a private ski racing school that would have no public access. So the town select board chair asked for help from the Trust for Public Land, and we partnered on a plan for the town to buy the ski area and manage it as a community asset. Their vision was to secure the trail network and the former ski resort, reinvent the town as a four-season recreation destination, improve the economic outlook of the town, protect a biodiversity hotspot, protect the public drinking water source that was on the resort property, and create a nonprofit community ski area and provide recreation opportunities to all families, regardless of income. Many people cannot afford $100 plus daily ski tickets in most areas. So they succeeded on all counts. Here's a map of the property. The resort property is in red, and in brown at the bottom is the existing West Windsor Town Forest. And you can see the propensity of trail networks throughout the property. So Trust for Public Land helped them buy the mountain and support their vision to become a four-season recreation destination, not dependent on fickle snowfall or expensive operations. We also worked with them to do a detailed ecological analysis of the property and a recreation analysis. Because this wasn't just a bunch of trails through plain vanilla forest land. It was a biodiversity hotspot on a monadnock, so a mountain kind of not connected to any other mountain range. So when we expanded their town forest by adding the resort property, we asked them to add a natural area overlay to protect the most important ecological areas. So as part of the conservation easement that's held by Upper Valley Land Trust, 775 acres of this property, there'll be no new trail building, nor any timber harvesting, eventually leading to old growth forest and protection of biodiversity at the top of the mountain. We also designated a multi-use recreation area that allowed a T-bar lift to go halfway up the old ski resort area, but the upper half of the mountain is for those willing to earn your turns, either with fat bikes or with skins on the bottom of your skis. So this was about $1 million project, and it was funded with a $300,000 grant from Vermont Housing Conservation Board. The town put a little in, over $100,000, and we secured $560,000 from Open Space Institute, 13 private foundations, and dozens of private donors. So 10 years later, what has the impact been? They made the front cover of the New York Times with an article about the town that saved a mountain and the mountain that saved a town. They have community concerts on the property. They've created a new discovery trail with interpretive signs. They have a after-school outdoor program where they bus the kids straight from the elementary school to the mountain and are outside every afternoon. Summer adventure camps, private events, and supporting all the races they did before, plus some new ones. And this is, and I'd love to hear your input if you're willing, but they built a new Ascutney Outdoor Center at the base. They put in a rope tow in the last 10 years with a tubing lift. The general store is thriving because there's lots of new visitors between 2010 and 2020. So this was like right before all the pandemic population increases, but their population increased 22% in those 10 years. And more permanent residents have come to live there versus seasonal residents, which has stabilized the school enrollment. Single family home prices more than doubled before the pandemic. And then, as I mentioned before, the revitalization of the general store as the Brownsville Butcher and Pantry. And their population has grown by more than 30% just in 4 years. So BHGB's $300,000 was absolutely vital to this community transformation in West Windsor. And I hope you support full funding for BHGB both this year and every year.
Questions from the committee? Comments?
Comment. I
none of that would have been possible without you guys, not one bit of it. I mean, we came up with or our town came up with a lot of really robust partnerships of like, small and big donations, but none of that would have mattered without your support and partnership.
Well, the volunteers that live in this town are, well, and the
Oh my goodness.
leadership on the select board are just like the best people I've ever met.
One of the things that I think is really amusing is when the article came out in the New York Times about the mountain that saved the town and the town that saved the mountain right back. If you read the comments, people across the country would say this is never going to survive based on volunteers, but actually we clamor. I'm a volunteer. We clamor and argue over who gets to volunteer. And I will also add that one of the things that Members has brought to our community is training or providing ski instruction for every single student who wants it. Starting in kindergarten, they close the schools down, not just in our town, but in the whole area. And they provide, through donations, they provide skis for all of the kids. So it doesn't matter what their income level is. And they learn first on the rope tow and then on the T-bar. And it's a huge, and we had, I don't know if we still do or not, because my kids aren't that young anymore, but we had as the instructors, like the trainer for the US ski team was one of the ski instructors, which is how I got my kids. So I said, you're not doing this. This opportunity. But it's really been a huge benefit in that, they continually give in robust ways to our town. And none of that would have been possible without you guys. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kate. I really appreciate your coming and telling us about the project and what you're doing.
Yeah.
Mary Cohen,
Yes.
please come forward and talk to us.
Screen. It says disabled.
Debbie, can you hear us? I just want to make sure I see your name up there.
Yes. Yes,
Okay,
I
thank
can.
you. All right.
Are you on the Zoom? Hold on. Yeah, so that works.
Is that going to work, or do you need
Yeah, we're
help
gonna-
from our committee assistant?
It's me usually. She's going to share. Just want to share. Entire screen.
There we go.
Hey. There we go. Hi, everybody. My name is Mary Cohen. I'm the Executive Director of the new Cornerstone Housing Partners, which is probably a name you have not heard much of yet. We are a new organization, official as of the first of the year. We have combined 3 housing organizations in the southwest section of Vermont, Bennington, Rutland, and actually part of us is even in Addison County. NeighborWorks of Western Vermont, Shires Housing, and the Housing Trust of Rutland County have all come together. This is super important. We are now a portfolio of 815 perpetually affordable apartments, as well as 74 shared equity homes. I will tell you that BHCB has been incredibly supportive of this merger, and the merger has really established a heft and a strength of housing organizations within the southwest corner. But it's really important, and again, BHCB has been instrumental in helping us accomplish this. Want to tell you a little bit about the projects? Yeah.
You going through the slides? Are you switching slides? Because they're not.
I've already had a
switching.
couple.
Yeah. It's me. There we go.
Maybe down there in the bottom right is the slideshow. Yeah.
It's share. Are you looking why it's not
Moving.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, you're just gonna need to do it.
Okay.
I
I will do it.
I
Yeah.
don't know what's,
Oh,
it's just not, it's not advancing, Mary, so.
Okay. bummer. Okay, so this is a current project that we are working on. This is in West Rutland. This top picture was what it used to be a year ago. That yellow building was burned. It was called a attractive nuisance, attracted the wrong types. The blue building was abandoned.
You might help her technically. She's unable to advance her slides.
I tried. There you go, just press that.
Oh.
It's great.
Who's it about?
Yay.
There you go.
Fabulous, thank you, thank you. I do want to just show you our logo. It's a lot of work. So anyway, this is a current project that we have underway. Now you can see the top picture is what it was. The bottom picture was taken last week. We are building 24 new units right in the center of West Rutland. Incredibly important and needed. In 2021, the town manager came to me and said, we have people who need to downsize in West Rutland. How can we possibly help them? And so this is the result. It's having quite an impact. And as you can see, the VHCB investment was significant, but it also leveraged almost $10 million in this project, coming into our community. Okay, this is East Creek Commons. East Creek Commons is actually a 35-unit project. I just want to show you this picture because this is what we're buying. This is currently owned by the city. We are not tearing it down, although it looks like it probably should come down. We are not only not tearing it down, we're going to renovate it and do an addition on there. So there'll be 22 units in this particular complex, but we've added some other buildings. Again, a significant VHCB investment. This project would not happen. This blight would not be taken care of if it wasn't for VHCB's investment. And then tax credit equity, et cetera. So again, leveraging another 8 million. This is just going to go through the projects quickly. This is a 30 unit that we are planning called Maplewood Commons. It was formerly known as 133 Forest Street. It happens to be in Mary's neighborhood. This is what we're looking at now. Unfortunately, there's been some tents in here recently. It's really probably a good idea to get them from outside the tent and into a nice, safe, affordable unit. There's going to be 30 units here. We are hoping to close on this project at the end of March. Again, would not happen without the VHCB investment. So on our organization over the last 4 years, what VHCB has done is not only support us in our real estate development, but supported our organizational strength. And as I had mentioned earlier, our merger would have been a lot more challenging if we didn't end the dollars from VHCB. They give us operational funding, make sure we have the highest trained staff to do this type of work, all really important investments in the organization. as well as in affordable housing. This is just in the last 4 years of what's been happening, which is significant. Certainly for Rutland County, this doesn't include Bennington County, but now that we're part of Bennington County, it will. It's super important. So what are we asking? We are asking certainly for the base funding that the governor has also agreed to. We are really appreciative of his support. And then the additional appropriations, don't look at the spelling of appropriations. The pipeline, because a lot of this work is not done yet. And so we need all the help that we can get.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Mary, thank you so much. Your new organization is very exciting and I wish it well.
Thank you. Thank you very
And
much.
to understand the message that you've all brought. Thank you so much to the representatives of the coalition for having come, and good luck with your next committee. Is Kevin Moyer here? Great. Kevin, I think this committee needs to take a 5-minute break. You can go ahead and sit down. So members of the committee, we are going to take a